Hello and welcome back to Digital Assets Daily. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening wherever you are in your corner of the world. A lot of pretty amazing things coming out, and I apologize if there's any loud noises. It's a little bit hectic in my area of the neighborhood. So back into the articles. This exclusive Senate Banking Committee to take action on embattled Fed nominee Judy Shelton next week. And if you're familiar with Judy Shelton, you know this is a massive ordeal that's about to take place because of her most popular line is, "I would like a gold-backed digital currency in a crypto kind of way." So that's a massive deal with XRP and possibly even Stellar. Thing we like to think about is really would be no different if you think back to 1969 with the SDR is a gold-backed currency today. It's basically no different than the digital currencies that we have, and it is backed by the 0.88 grams of gold. So this is kind of just an addition. It's not really something that's never been done before because it's still current since 1969 with the SDR. Pretty soon there's not really going to get into that because I had a discussion recently. Just know that it's massive and it's very tough for me to not release information, but I had a specific conversation recently in some deep research. I found a lot of information and I contacted the corporations involved and those parties who, let's just say those parties that are involved. And at first they were kind of hesitant to confirm what I had found. Being a private, it wasn't so much like an NDA. I didn't sign anything, but out of respect and professionalism as a journalist for Digital Assets Daily, I did give them my word that I wouldn't mention it, but they said they would give me the update and the blessing to release it as we do get closer. And it's a few times I've almost slipped on this. And again, it's very exciting. So when I see stuff like this, man, it's very difficult to hold it back, get a little bit pumped up like it's Christmas morning. And I am one of the kids. All right into the article. The Senate Banking Committee is expected to mark up Judy Shelton's nomination to the Federal Reserve next Tuesday, a signal she is expected to pass along the panel with Christopher Wallen, another Fed nominee, and Shelton, whose nomination has run into Senate GOP opposition because of her unorthodox views, has been held up for weeks because of skepticism from Senators John Kennedy and Richard Shelby, two members of the Banking Committee. And so we have the Senate Banking Committee Chairman Mike Crapo's expected notice of a markup for Shelton and Waller next week is a sign they have the votes to pass the committee, which has a 13 Republican member and 12 Democrats. Shelton's and Waller's markups are expected to take place in executive session and precede a hearing for Dana Wade, President Trump's nominee to serve as the Department of Housing and Urban Development's Assistant Secretary for Housing and Federal Housing Commissioner, and Brian Miller to serve as Special Inspector General for Pandemic Recovery. Trump nominated Wade and Miller in February and in April, respectively. Kennedy was undecided for weeks over how to vote for Shelton, who came under fire for her past support of returning to the gold standard, something that was abandoned in 1971. And if you're not familiar with that, the gold standard, gold-backed U.S. dollar, it was permanently removed from the U.S. dollar where it became a Federal Reserve note, basically an IOU. So we had the gold-backed currency back then. Now she just wants to bring it back in a digital kind of way. In case I didn't finish earlier, my hopes with the information I have knowledge of is I'm supposed to get the first release on this when it gets closer to time. I felt like I didn't finish that conversation as I kind of jumped back in. Again, I'm pretty excited to all this news. This is massive. This is a big deal to me, and I think anyone who's been around here for a long time, this gives an instant jump if they do come out with this gold-backed digital currency. And after this, we're going to get into another article. And if you mentally think of both of these articles as one, I think you're going to be very excited too as an investor in Ripple and Stellar. A return to the gold standard would play havoc with the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, which has swelled to more than $6 trillion because of the issue at hand. Shelton has since backed off her advocacy for returning to the gold standard, telling the Banking Committee in February, "I would not advocate for going back to a prior historical monetary arrangement," and saying Congress has the ultimate authority to regulate the value of U.S. money. But as they state in Congress and directly in the reserve currency, that it has to be backed by gold. And that's a very interesting game that somebody's playing there with words. Kennedy said she wanted to read more of Shelton's writings before making a decision, and Shelby said he would oppose her if another Republican did, but pledged not to act on his own to block the nominee. Senator Pat Toomey was also skeptical of Shelton's nomination, but promised in February to vote for her after she pledged to oppose using monetary policy to devalue the dollar. Interesting. Shelton, who wrote to Toomey in a February 25th letter that statutory decree, instead of the Fed, defines the structure, responsibilities, and aims of the U.S. central banking system, and that the central bank does not have authority to use monetary policy for the purpose of devaluing the dollar. Toomey voiced discomfort with Shelton's views during a February 13 hearing, and that's a very, very dangerous path to go down. This beggar thy neighbor mutual currency devaluation is not in our interest and is not in the mandate of the Fed to pursue it, he said during Shelton's confirmation hearing. And Shelton's biggest backer in the Trump administration is the National Economic Council Director Larry Kudlow. According to Senate sources familiar with the behind-the-scenes wrangling over her nomination, a spokeswoman for the Banking Committee declined to comment on the markup it is publicly announced. All hearings and markups are publicly announced when they are scheduled, said Amanda Critchfield, who is a spokesperson for Kennedy and did not immediately respond to requests for a comment. Next article is very exciting after hearing the first. The SEC's crypto mom on outlook for the digital dollar and the end of her term in June. In a recent panel, the SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce, aka Crypto Mom, opened up about the prospect of a digital dollar as well as the end of her term coming in June. Now, can you imagine if we get Judy Shelton in office, meaning we as an investor who wants to back the digital currency by gold, and then we get Crypto Mom before the end of her term to release a digital dollar? What does that do to thoughts in your head? Gets me pretty excited, actually. A noted crypto defender at the United States Securities and Exchange Commission has spoken to the end of her term, scheduled for June, as well as a relationship between a potential digital dollar and independent crypto. In an April 28th web stream with Crypto Finance Conference St. Moritz, Commissioner Hester Peirce, sometimes known as Crypto Mom, addressed the increasingly visible role of a potential digital dollar, but doubted that it posed a threat to digital currency in particular, and it's a natural progression that they're going to think, hey, should we digitize our currency? And if so, will that be good or bad for our ability to play our role as a central bank, said Peirce. And I don't think that means that other types of digital currencies that are privately developed are going to disappear. There are, however, issues of trust and privacy at play with CBDCs. You need to think about privacy issues if you're creating some sort of digital currency. I think that's a really important question for society to ask because people don't really feel comfortable with the government or anybody else monitoring their transactions. And in response to a question about the end of her term, which is coming in June, Peirce suggested that they may not be the end. You can stay on until they put someone else in your seat, she said. And Peirce is the crypto industry's most visible ally within the SEC. And so her coming departure concerns many. In response to a question about the community losing its crypto mom, Peirce joked, "I think it should be a whole commission full of crypto parents, not just one crypto mom." And she continued to emphasize the role of level and clear regulation as more important than any one figure. It's about setting clear rules and then saying, "Hey, now you guys do your thing," Peirce said. Building structures that last beyond any particular person is what really matters. And if you follow us on Twitter, you can see the information I shared today in a few videos kind of lines up with that. Kind of takes the team, not so much one for all and one person to win and take it all. Regarding stablecoins, Peirce said that they pose an interesting challenge for regulators, and that's where a lot of the market interest is, stablecoins. And they also pose some interesting legal questions. And not only do we have to think about whether they are securities, but in the US at least we have to think about how they interact with other parts of securities laws. And the subject of whether managed stablecoins and securities came to the fore with the announcement of Libra. A major recent policy initiative from Peirce is her proposed safe harbor of 3 years for initial coin offerings, protecting them from pursuit as securities if they feel certain reporting requirements that fall short of full securities registration. And I think that was probably a huge sigh of relief for the industry, for coins that are going through these uncertainties, and banks and financial institutions who are considering using them. You know, they've been using the sandbox initiatives, which gives them a somewhat of a legal cushion and breathing room to try out new technology that's going to improve the system. But I think adding her the safe harbor was a breath of fresh air. Remember, adding on to that too, guys, we had the Volcker rule that basically gave them this year to get things in order, and a possibility for the regulations to come into play. So we know they're working on regulations, and we know they're talking about the digital dollar. We know they're talking still about the gold-backed digital currencies. So many things are aligning up for this year. It's just a matter of who, what, when, and where. We know it's happening. We just don't have the broken down timeline, and it has been delay after delay after delay from the middle of last year to basically the middle of this year. It keeps flashing through my mind with Christine Lagarde saying the middle of 2020, and then her other statement of where she said basically Q1 they had their issues, Q2 had their issues, the second half of 2020 they were going to take off and launch and start moving forward. Then we had Donald Trump. He threw around the date of July 1st. Then recently he's mentioned brought a lot of attention, I should say, to the 4th of July, saying it should be a very exciting one. We know we have AG Barr, the Attorney General, stating he wants to open up the country without any further delay on the United States citizens, breaking their right of being possibly unconstitutional beyond May 1st, and on and on and on. A lot of excitement for this year, so we'll pretty much see where it goes from there. I'm hopeful, as they've said over and over, the executives this year is the year. Going back and research to 2015, the focus again was for 2020. Everyone's saying it should be a very, very exciting Christmas. I'm very hopeful and believing in their words. If I'm going to believe in their product, why wouldn't I believe the rest of the information they have to share? I want to finish off this video with a reminder that it's not financial advice. It's for entertainment purposes only. And with this final thought, work hard in silence. Let your success be your noise. Again, guys, I never really remember to say this, but if you don't mind, hit the like and subscribe, click the little notification bell so you'll know when we're releasing more videos. A little distracted in this one. I'm pretty excited. This is massive news in my perspective because it puts us one step closer to where we need to be for launch. Guys, much love to all of you. Thank you. Catch you in the next one.